Hey, welcome to the Cory Morgan Show, getting into mid-November 2021. I just want to go on a quick, first I got to start by thanking our subscribers. I've always got to thank them. I tend to forget sometimes. If you haven't subscribed already to the Western Standard Online, go there, westernstandardonline.com. Take out a membership. It's $10 a month. You get a free trial for a couple of weeks. You'll find it worth your while. You honestly will. That's where you can get the commentary, the columns without a paywall, videos, news reporting, breaking news, things like that. Take it out. And for those who've already subscribed, thank you very much. That's what keeps us going. That's how you have independent media who will speak on the truth, who will speak on these things. And I'll tell you, I saw an example just today from the Toronto Globe. Some people call it the Globe and Mail, but we know where it's focused. It was talking about how Saskatchewan was bizarrely talking about declaring itself a nation. You know, they say that right outright. It's bizarre when Saskatchewan does that. You know, you would think maybe it is, except Quebec just did that. Why does that quote-unquote national newspaper refer to an action of Saskatchewan that's exactly the same as what Quebec did as bizarre, unthinkable, stupid, foolish? But doesn't utter a peep when Quebec wants to do the same thing. It's a great reflection on how screwed up our media is in Canada and how screwed up Canada is in general. You know, Quebec wags this dog, and we know it. And the tax-funded media, well, they do what their funding masters tell them. So with that subsidies to media, plus, you know, of course, constant threats of censorship coming out of the federal government, media doesn't know if it's coming or going. They'll just comply and do as they're told. The Western Standard won't. Nobody's subsidizing us. Nobody's offering us tax dollars to keep operating. We aren't asking for them. We'll report on and comment on what we think is important and what our listeners and viewers and readers think is important. Getting on to that federal front, you know, where is O'Toole? What a sad sack of a leader that guy has been so far. But we've got Trudeau, again, you know, gallivanting around, virtue signaling, talking about putting an emissions cap on Western resources and phasing out the oil field. O'Toole's hiding from that. He's putting out fires within his own party. Line 5, and I've got a separate column on that. Be sure to read that, check it out, or catch it read out by me in a different rant on video. But I mean, this is just another symbol. This is something that's huge. It should be huge. It should be making waves across this nation. People should be getting up because this critical oil infrastructure line is on the brink of being shut down. And our leadership doesn't care. People in Sarnia are going to be out of work by the thousands. Our leadership don't care. You know, I mean, they're going through the motions. They talk about things and treaties, but they haven't made a push. When they really want to get something done, you hear about it. They're just going through the motions. Quebec and Ontario are really going to feel it. I propose shutting it down. Shut it down. Let's do it. Fine. Let's just do it. Give them what they're asking for. Let them freeze for a little while. Let those airfares double. Let the airports of Pearson and Montreal and even Detroit shut down. Get that taste of it. Maybe some of our political leadership will start to wake up. Though I don't hold out much hope for it. But at least some people will get a taste of reality because reality is missing a lot. So for today's show, we're going to go in on the federal front. I've got Jay Hill. He's the interim leader of the Maverick Party coming in. Now, the Maverick Party had a less than spectacular showing in the last federal election, but they did establish themselves. They're new, and they are Western focused. That's all they're going to be. There's questions of whether they're separatist or they're not separatist, but there has been now a full leadership race scheduled and declared. So somebody new is going to be taking the helm of that party. They're going to be going into the next election, organizing in the West. Perhaps there'll be a few candidates to offer a few senses of direction of where it's going to go. We do need some more voices because, again, as been pointed out with Trudeau's climate notions and things such as that, our Western members of Parliament haven't exactly been lighting the world on fire over all of that either. So maybe it's time to go back to something like the old Reform days. And Jay Hill was an old Reform member. It'll be an interesting chat, so stay tuned and let's see what his plans are going forward. All right, thanks for joining me, Jay. It's been a little while. I think we did have you on election night briefly there and chatted. So the Maverick Party is, I guess, hit its next point in its evolution. You guys have run through an election. You're established. Some people know who you are. I mean, there was no seats won or anything like that, but everything comes in steps, I guess. I'd like to begin with those. So you've declared a timeline for a formal leadership race now to bring in a permanent leader. Can you expand on that?
Certainly, Cory. First of all, I guess I'll just step back and say that, yes, we finally got registered so that we're on a level playing field with all the other parties. And of course, you're well aware that the registration process is such that you have to be eligible with Elections Canada rules, eligible for registration as a federal political party. And then, of course, you have to go through an election campaign. And once your first candidate is confirmed by Elections Canada, then you're officially registered. And of course, what is important about registration is that a political party can issue tax receipts, quite generous tax receipts, to their donors, to their supporters. So we've cleared that hurdle in this first election campaign. Obviously, as you and I discussed before, we didn't do near as well as we'd hoped, and there's a variety of factors that play into that. One of the things that we did here was that people wanted to see a leader, the sort of traditional leader that was running for the party, running for a seat in Parliament. And of course, I did not. I felt and still feel that I've served my time. And so now we're officially into a leadership race. I'm quite excited about it. It'll be obviously our first leader for the Maverick Party will be elected, and we've set the date for that. And so there's a number of different steps along that path between now and May. And we'll see what happens. And I'm hopeful that a number of people will step forward to contest the leadership.
Great. Well, let's assume some of the viewers still might not be quite familiar with the Maverick Party. Now, post-election and on to this next, I guess, level of the evolution. What is the party in a nutshell, and what are you trying to pursue with it right now?
Well, if I had to sum it up just in a few words, Cory, Maverick Party is all about respect and autonomy for Western Canada. And there's a variety of different reasons that you would be more familiar with than many Westerners of why Western Canada needs to assert that autonomy, that separatism, if you will, from Ottawa. Ottawa and our federal governments keep infringing on provincial jurisdiction. It's been happening more and more, and certainly has become very prevalent under the current Prime Minister and his government. And so Maverick Party is all about convincing Westerners that they need a different way of approaching federal politics. It does no good to elect NDP, Conservative, or Liberal members of Parliament. Nothing's going to change for the West with the status quo.
And recent events have really demonstrated that, I think, quite well with, as predicted, Justin Trudeau went off to the COP26, made some bold declarations on emissions caps and outright targeting Western Canada's oil and gas sector. And the silence out of O'Toole has been deafening. We've got a federal leader who relies on Western support, takes the Western contributions, but when the time comes to stand up to them, he won't say anything for fear of alienating Central Canadian voters. So it leads to a standoff that's not serving the West right now.
Exactly. And the great irony, of course, is even before and certainly since the September 20th election, when largely prairie Westerners, I'll call them, re-elected their Conservative incumbents. So we've got all these Conservative members of Parliament that were re-elected again with massive majorities in most cases. And, they're silent. They're silent because the edict has come down from Mr. O'Toole and party headquarters that you stay quiet on hot button issues. Well, what is a hot button issue? I guess equalization, which Alberta just had a referendum on that. 62% of Albertans supported scrapping equalization if that was ever possible. And yet no words, not only from Mr. O'Toole, but from our very own Conservative members of Parliament, just silence, as you say.
Yeah, well, and it's not sellable in Central Canada. So, I think that's where Westerners have really got to reevaluate where you're going. People say, oh, you can split the vote, get more Liberals. We've already got them.
Yeah.
We don't have much to lose. Plus, we don't even have an effective opposition speaking up for us with a Liberal government. So, we're back to, to turn the clock back, and in the sense whether you're self-representing it, but the Reform Party days, we'd hit that stalemate. The Mulroney government certainly wasn't representing Western interests at that time in the CF-18 contract. It took him a couple of years to get rid of the National Energy Program. He didn't hurry to get rid of that thing. So what would be different than the Reform this time? I thought Reform was great. I thought some of our best federal government we ever had actually was Chrétien with the Reform, and you guys breathing down his neck. Is that kind of what you re-envision coming again, in a sense? A conscience in the House perhaps pushing a government into a more capable role? Or?
Well, certainly Maverick members of Parliament would be similar to Reformers in the sense that they would be speaking out very volubly on issues of importance to their constituents and Western Canadians. They wouldn't have to consider every position and every speech in the House of Commons framed in the sense that, oh, well, will this offend anybody in Quebec or Toronto? Well, Mavericks won't care. Mavericks will be there to, as reformers were, to speak out on issues of importance to their constituents and Western Canadians. And so, yes, it's an incremental step. There are people, and a growing number of people in Western Canada, obviously, that support outright sovereignty, that think that we need to move, and indeed we may end up moving towards a completely separate nation. But the majority of Westerners are not there yet. And I've always maintained, Cory, that if Western Canada, whether it's Alberta or Saskatchewan or parts of the other provinces, if we ever get to the point where they want to move towards a completely separate sovereign nation, you have to win that referendum first. You don't want to repeat the mistakes of Quebec once you get to that point and lose. So incrementally, Maverick Party supports the Fair Deal Panel recommendations. I see that Premier Scott Moe in Saskatchewan now is moving. He's actually talking about the very same thing that I sent him a letter on the 25th of May, suggesting he started talking about a nation within a nation. He did that yesterday. Yes. And good on him. I applaud him. I hope that Jason Kenney will follow through on that. I don't know what the delay has been on the part of Mr. Kenney and his majority UCP government in not bringing forward more of those Fair Deal Panel recommendations and really push it forward from Alberta's perspective and basically draw the line in the sand with Prime Minister Trudeau.
Yeah, it's been frustrating. I mean, committee after commission after talk after motion after, come on. I mean, take one of these things and run with it for crying out loud. You've been in there with a majority for over 2 years now. There's no more excuses to keep talking about it.
And I think the strongest one, and I think you would agree, Cory, is in the area of taxation. I think that Alberta needs to pursue, and Saskatchewan, and I think Scott Moe is going in this direction, pursue all they can in the sense of taking control of taxation as Quebec has done. And taking control of the fact that in joint programs, provincial federal programs, have the opt-out clause that Quebec has, where they say, well, we don't like your program as it's structured. We'll develop our own program, but we want exactly the same amount of money that we would have got had we been in the provincial federal program. There are steps like that I would say Alberta and Saskatchewan, it's long overdue for them to emulate Quebec and do the very same thing. I'm thankful that Scott Moe is now talking about doing that.
Absolutely. We got to stop getting mad at them and start learning from them.
Exactly.
I mean, Blanchette doesn't think twice about what Alberta thinks when he speaks because he doesn't care. He's there for Quebec. He was elected for Quebec.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. He's going to speak in Quebec's interest. And I mean, whether people think that's a good idea or bad, it works.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody can deny that the Bloc is influential in Parliament. And I would dare say much more influential than every one of those Conservative members right now. When Blanchette speaks, Trudeau listens. When the CPC speaks right now, Trudeau laughs.
Yeah. Well, and as you say, it's because they have to couch everything they say. They have to compromise with everything they say. So that's why they're silent on things about what's their official position on equalization. Well, they don't want to anger Quebec, so they say nothing, even though 62% of Albertans voted to get rid of it.
Yeah, and I suspect it would be even higher if it wasn't for some internal politics we have going on in Alberta right now.
Exactly. Sort of the anti-Jason Kenney vote,
yeah,
which unfortunately probably reflected in some ways in those numbers.
Well, it's been frustrating because it feels almost like everybody is suddenly, for the time being, in favor of big government, intrusive government. We're seeing that in multiple elections, provincially, federally, even municipally.
Right.
But when you see that core that still realizes they're looking at equalization, they're saying that's a bad program. You know, that's a left, right, or center. They look at it that it's not a good program. So even in these times, 62% said we want out of this thing. That's significant. That's a strong thing. So it's good that you're providing an outlet for the people who are frustrated, a place to go, a place to dedicate their energies, and hopefully, you know, achieve some change. So we'll kind of finish up with the timeline. So your race is going to open up in January, I believe, and it's closing in May for the leadership.
Well, as per our constitution, which we passed at our first convention on the 7th of August, the first step was to strike a committee. Once I let it be known that I'm going to be stepping down, and sort of a firm date for that, we struck a committee of councillors, members of our governing council, and they right now are doing the research and putting together the draft rules and regulations for contestants for this leadership race. So we hope to report back in early December. Obviously, we'd be letting yourself and other members of the media know what the rules are the council comes up with. Then we're going to have it out there over Christmas so that would-be contestants will have some time to consider the rules, see if they make sense to them, see if it's workable for them. And then we'll start accepting applicants in early January. That will give them about 4.5 months to get out there, raise money, sell memberships, and hopefully have a real robust leadership race with 2, 3, 4, however many there are. Hopefully not like the recent conservative leadership race where you had 12 people on a stage. I would hope that it's a half a dozen at most of very serious contenders. And it'll culminate on the 14th of May. So not a lot of time to put this together, and we hope to generate a lot of interest.
Yeah, and I mean, leadership races can really help build a party. I mean, it really shows some people on the ground get out there, sell those memberships, sell the party, sell themselves.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing it still goes to committee. Would this be probably a one-member, one-vote type of leadership race, not the delegated sort or weighted by region or any of that complexity?
Exactly. And I'm glad you used the word complexity. I would have said, that's a sort of nonsense that we see the Conservatives go through with the quality of all the ridings, regardless of whether you have 50 members in that riding or 5,000.
Yeah.
And that's always, as a reformer, that always stuck in my craw. In our constitution and bylaw that we passed at our convention again on the 7th of August, it calls for one member, one vote. So that's already been decided. We don't need the governing council to make that decision. The delegates at our convention supported that overwhelmingly. So it will be one member, one vote. Doesn't matter whether the person holding a Maverick Party membership is in Tuktoyaktuk or Vancouver or downtown Calgary. Every vote counts the same.
Excellent. Well, where can we find more information, I guess, than your site and such for the race, if people are interested in joining or supporting or just want to find out more about you guys?
Yeah, exactly. We've just launched a new refurbished website. We have all of the members of our governing council and the board of directors for Maverick Party Fund, our not-for-profit corporation that is the financial arm of the party, similar to the Conservatives and Liberals. In how we operate. So all of that information is on our new website, and we would ask people to check us out and hopefully buy a membership, get involved in the party. Everyone's welcome.
Yeah, and that URL is maverickparty.ca?
Have maverickparty.ca. Very simple. Yep.
Great. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking again before the race is up, and thanks for the work you've done so far. And well, hope the rest of your holding the helm for this term goes smoothly for you.
Thanks very much, Cory. Appreciate it. Appreciate being asked on your show again.
Great. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah.